Alright, we're still pretty early into this world, so today's plan is just to head underground and see what we can find. We need pretty much everything at this point. Iron, coal, and hopefully some diamonds, so we can come back up with enough resources to actually start making some progress. While I do that, I found a bunch of Reddit stories that I wanted to read. Some of them are pretty ridiculous, so I figured we'd go through them while we do a bit of mining. Alright, let's see what strangers on the internet have managed to get themselves into today. Am I the a-hole for telling a girl to stop wasting food? I, 21 female, usually always sit with the same group of people in my university's dining area. There's this girl who I've talked to a few times, but I'm not really friends with. She's kind of quiet, but when she finally talks, she seems normal. I've sat across from her a few times and noticed how she was eating because it was weird to me. She eats maybe half of her food. Keep in mind you control the amount of food. It's cooked by the cafeteria staff buffet style. She could easily take less, and kind of plays with it with her fork when she's done, aka eating half of it, sometimes even less. I didn't say anything for a while, but a few weeks ago I had to ask her why she always only ate half her food. She seemed a bit embarrassed, but answered she thought she was more hungry and laughed it off. I then asked her why she made this mistake every time we ate, and that she must have learned by now. She didn't really answer. I don't actually remember, but it wasn't actually an explanation, and left pretty quickly. She doesn't really show up that much anymore, but when she does, she still eats like this, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her once again, and also asked her if her parents never told her not to play with her food. It was a genuine question. Some people are raised in households where manners aren't important, but obviously they are for most people. She got really mad at me and told me to stop commenting on her eating habits and that it was none of my business. I told her that it absolutely was, since she was sitting at our table and obviously wasting food. She told me to go F myself and left and threw out the rest of her food. Again. After she left, one of my friends told me to leave her alone as she seemed like she was having a hard time and maybe had some sort of issue with food. Yeah, obviously she has an issue with food. She keeps wasting it. She hasn't shown up again. I'm assuming she buys her own food now, which might teach her not to waste it, so that's good. The same friend who told me to leave her alone keeps pestering me to apologize to her, but I think she should apologize to me. She's unnecessarily rude when being asked the most basic and obvious questions and also told me to go F myself? That's way more harsh than anything I've ever told her. Keep in mind that I care a lot about food waste and the environment. Am I the a-hole for telling a girl to stop wasting food? I definitely think the poster's in the wrong here. I understand why they were frustrated and don't think they were trying to be malicious or anything, but I just don't think that's a reasonable way to handle the situation. They were probably a dozen different conversations they could have had before it got to this point, and instead they kind of jumped straight to the nuclear option. I'm curious to see if they still feel the same way after reading all the comments though, because apparently they came back and left an update. So, here it is. Okay, I'm the a-hole. Sorry, I'm not studying to be an eating disorder specialist. I looked up stuff about it and I'm realizing I was too harsh. I'll apologize the next time I see her and try not to be so condescending. But you should all follow your own advice. If people genuinely don't know something, you should tell them nicely instead. And I realized I should have tried to educate her nicely about food waste and not have commented at all on how she was eating. You know what? I actually respect that. I still think the poster was in the wrong originally, but I think this is about the best update you could ask for. They took the criticism on board, did a bit of reading themselves, and admitted they handled the situation poorly. That's honestly a lot more than you get from most of these updates. I also kind of like that they pointed out people should educate others kindly. I mean, they're not wrong. The internet isn't exactly known for giving constructive criticism. It is a little funny that they only realized that after thousands of people roasted them, but I do think they have a point. Hopefully, they actually follow through and apologize the next time they see her. Assuming they do that, I think this is one of those situations that everybody involved will probably forget about in a few weeks anyway. Honestly, this was a surprisingly satisfying update. It's always nice when somebody actually changes their mind instead of spending 3 paragraphs arguing with everyone in the comments, explaining to my husband why his coworker has a crush on him. My husband and I, both 35, have been together for 7 years, married for 5. My husband grew up as a nerd and overweight. He unfortunately was bullied a lot in adolescence, not just by boys, but by girls. The girls would call him a whale, or one awful story where a group of girls made one of their friends ask him to a dance because she lost a bet. When he got to his 20s, he gained some confidence and got healthy. But because of his history, he never can tell when women flirt with him. He never assumes someone is hitting on him because that never really happened in his life. My husband works in tech, and within his team there is one woman named Mary. My husband and I are both very well aware how tough the tech industry is for women. He told me during his one-on-one meetings with Mary, she expressed that she was bringing up issues and people were ignoring her. And then they would bring up the same issue she spoke about a month later, like it was their idea. My husband was trying to figure out why Mary was being ignored. I said to him, "You know why." To which he said, "Oh, no, do you think that is why?" To which I told him it might not be the whole issue, but she very well may be being ignored because she is a woman. He asked if he should talk to her about it, and I encouraged him to. I explained that even if it isn't the case, acknowledging that you will support her is important. So he brought it up to Mary, asking if she felt that she was being ignored because people in her position get ignored, or does she in particular get ignored? He told me they had a very thoughtful conversation, and she did get a little emotional at the end. Since that conversation, she has felt more comfortable opening up to my husband about her feelings regarding work, and they've talked about personal things as well. I could tell she was crushing on him a little bit, but nothing inappropriate. Last night, while we were getting for bed, my husband looked at his phone. Mary had sent him a message on their work channel at the end of the workday, asking how his day was, saying, "Feels weird I didn't talk to you today." My husband looks at me and said, "So, I think Mary might have a little crush on me." To which I said, "Well, of course she does." He looks at me and says, "What do you mean?" I told him the answer would make him sad. I told him I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first time in Mary's professional life where a man not only considered her feelings, but asked her about how she felt. He was treating her as an equal, and she is probably so grateful to have someone at work to confide in that she's a little sweet on him. My husband and I joke a lot about people tell him he is a good guy for doing basic human things. When I explained why Mary had a crush on him, he sighed and said, "So once again, all I needed to do to get a girlfriend back in the day was not be a dick." To which I said, "Pretty much." I don't know, this one just made me feel kind of sad more than anything else. I actually think the poster's explanation is probably right. Whether Mary has a crush on him or not, I have no idea. Maybe she does. Maybe she's just really grateful to have someone at work she feels comfortable talking to. But I do think there is something to be said for the fact that when someone finally feels listened to, it's really easy to become attached to the person who actually took the time to listen. And honestly, I felt bad for the husband too. That little joke he made at the end about all he needed to do to get a girlfriend was not be a dick. I don't know. It kind of sounds like he still carries a lot of that stuff from when he was younger. Getting bullied like that, especially by people you're trying to impress, probably sticks with you for a long time. I also just like the way he handled the whole situation. He wasn't trying to be anybody's hero or anything. He just noticed someone was struggling, asked if they wanted to talk about it, and listened. That really shouldn't be considered above and beyond, but I can also understand why someone would appreciate it if they hadn't experienced much of that before. Hopefully, Mary doesn't let it turn into something more, though. I think as long as it stays as a harmless little work crush, it'll probably just pass with time. It seems like they both have a pretty healthy level of respect for each other, and I'd hate for that to become awkward. I think my girlfriend has been trying to get me fired from all my jobs. I'm shaken. Please help me. I'm M24, and I've been with GF, female 29, let's call her Janice, for 2.5 years. I just finished my education when we started dating, and I have been doing all sorts of jobs since. Sometimes 2 at a time. I did this to expand my resume and gather job experience. I worked in cafes, bookstores, a library, a grocery store, and as an English tutor. Most of those jobs lasted about 3 to 5 months. My shortest stay was 2.5 weeks, my longest 8 months. But since I didn't have a hard time applying for new positions, I tried to block it out, though it was kind of eating me up internally. People called to complain about me, people left bad reviews about me, people used my employee Wi-Fi access to look up sketchy things on the internet under my name. Former employees called to inform them about me, right name and all, and much, much more subtle stuff that I couldn't disprove. But I was too anxious to do anything about it. I just told my girlfriend. She comforted me. She supported me every time I got my life ruined by these people. But I kept going, though they kept finding me. Fast forward to this week, I currently hold a part-time position at a bakery. I've been working there for 2.5 months. It's going okay, but my manager approached me about something regarding our Google reviews. Someone was complaining about an employee, and their description of them could only really fit me. It was on a day where we're pretty short on staff, so I could have been the only person in the store on that day for all I know. Anyway, their review contained some pretty elaborate and nasty comments about me. This has happened on 1 or 2 of my jobs already. I told my manager that it was all pretty bogus and that someone had a vendetta against me, as it happened before. She believed me and told me that she'll dismiss the comment. On my break, I checked out the review myself. Their username was kinda stupid. I'm not gonna type it out here since I still work there, but I'll just call them Mick Myrtle, as it was in the same range of sounds kinda fake but not really. Anyway, I come home but don't tell Janice about it. She has heard it all before, so I didn't see the point in complaining about another time I almost lost my position. We chat, all is well, and she leaves the room. Her phone is on the table, and suddenly, she gets a notification or an email of some sort from Google. I don't remember what it said exactly, but the pop-up read something along the lines of, "Mick Myrtle, manager, has responded to your review." My heart dropped. I've been trying to ignore it since. This was 2 days ago. It just fit in the picture of bad reviews. It fit in the picture of the phone complaints my workplaces have received about me in the past. It fits in the picture of all the sketchy things I've been fired for. Why would she do that, though? I'm looking for an explanation. This literally can't be. She's the only thing keeping me sane. I don't know what to do. At first, I just thought this guy had unbelievably bad luck. I mean, getting one fake complaint is unfortunate, but having it happen at almost every job you've ever had? That's the kind of thing where you almost start wondering if there's something we're not being told. But then that notification pops up, and I don't know how else you're supposed to interpret that. It would be one heck of a coincidence if somebody else just happened to have the exact same fake Google username. I also can't stop thinking about how she was always the person comforting him after every single thing happened, which is obviously what you'd expect from your partner. But if she really is behind all of this, that's honestly kind of terrifying. You're trusting the one person who's causing the problem in the first place. I'm hoping there's some explanation that we're missing because this is a pretty serious accusation to make based on one notification. But, I don't know. If I saw that on my partner's phone, I'd be pretty shaken too. Apparently, the poster came back with an update, so this next part is that update. Hello people who are still invested. I'm sorry for not updating you guys earlier. A lot has been going on. First of all, yes, we broke up. That's why I'll be referring to her as my ex from now on. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. On the Monday of the following week, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I told my ex I needed her booking account to book on a train ticket to visit my dad for a few days. She complied, and when she was in the shower getting ready for work, I booked my ticket and started looking through her emails. After some digging, I found an email to herself which contained a spreadsheet file. I sent the file to myself, printed it out, and took a screenshot. Why? The spreadsheet contained about every single information about me that there was. Numbers, emails, passwords, work times, colleagues, their numbers and social medias, as well as some emails and passwords that she used for accounts to ruin my life with. Everything was on there, conveniently sorted for her to ruin my life as efficiently as possible. When she left for work, I decided it would be best to immediately pack my stuff. Nothing that mattered would be left behind. I felt like a wanted man, like I was being hunted despite nothing being seemingly out of place. I called my boss, told her I would be taking some time off from work, and headed out to see my dad. Needless to say, he was the sanity I needed. I cried about everything I saw. I panicked for a whole 2 days straight, about how my life was ruined and I didn't know what to do. He had to sleep on the couch in the guest room because I was so scared of my ex coming in. He handled it like a champ. I love you, Dad. He called the police, a lawyer, and most recently a therapist for me, because I was in the most horrible state of my entire life. We're currently sorting out the legal stuff. I haven't talked to my ex, except for letting her know it was over and that she's a sick psychopath. My dad handled the rest. I changed all my passwords and I'm now looking for a place to live. Sorry for the brief update. My mind is tangled. Please ask questions if you want to know more. Edit. By the way, thank you to every single person who gave me advice, talked to me over DMs, and was generally concerned about me. I appreciate every single one of you. After finding that spreadsheet, I don't really know what else you can say. That's not somebody acting out of anger in the moment. That's something that took time, keeping track of all his jobs, his passwords, his coworkers, even making fake accounts. That's just incredibly calculated. It's honestly pretty disturbing. I also felt really bad reading the part about him staying with his dad. The fact that he was so scared she was going to show up that his dad slept in the same room with him. I don't know. That part kind of hit me. You can tell this whole thing completely shattered his sense of security. I'm really glad he actually listened to everybody's advice though. It would have been really easy to convince himself he was overreacting and just ignore it. But instead he got out of there, changed all his passwords, contacted a lawyer, and started seeing a therapist. I think that's about the best outcome you could hope for after finding something like that. Edit. After editing and more research, I found a third update from the OP. Went back on here and saw a bunch of DMs, March 10th, 2022. And some of y'all came here quite recently. I've answered all of the DMs so far, and before I let the next batch of people wait, you'd think there wouldn't be after 2 years. I'll give you a quick update. Spoiler, it isn't that interesting. TLDR. We ended up not taking her to court over it. This is quite controversial, considering the abhorrent things she's done to me, but I do not regret this decision. The satisfaction of seeing her get punished would have been overshadowed by the sheer amount of dread, anxiety, and fear I would have faced in those court hearings. I was a nervous mess. I couldn't eat for weeks without throwing up. My dad had to settle most of the important stuff because I physically couldn't. Thank you, Dad. On the bright side, our lawyers settled the situation beautifully in private, and I haven't had any problems with her since, that I am aware of. I've moved houses, got a stable job, and found the closure and justice I was looking for through therapy. I hope she did as well. We've had zero contact since then, and I still haven't read any of the messages she sent me those years ago. Of course, I'm nowhere near done with my journey. I still have all of my social media accounts set to private and insist on keeping a low profile online. I still get anxiety, especially when there's problems at work, but I haven't had any panic attacks in months, and my therapist has been great. I don't know how she's doing. I don't know if she's moved on, or if she's seen the story float around the web. Hello, YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat. Way to break the fourth wall. I don't know how much she knows about how my life is currently going, but nothing's happened since then that I could attribute to her schemes. Sorry if this update is kinda a jumbled mess. I just woke up and I've repressed a lot of what happened. Thank you all for your kind messages. Cheers. Even if people on Reddit disagreed, I do completely understand why you didn't take her to court. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that going through a court case doesn't just punish the other person. It means you have to keep reliving everything that happened to you over and over again. And after reading how terrified he was in that first update, I can completely understand why he just wanted to close that chapter of his life and move on. Honestly, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this whole story. He got away from the situation, found a stable job, started therapy, and it sounds like he's slowly getting his life back. That's a much happier ending than reading about another year of legal battles. I also really liked that he ended by saying he hopes she found closure too. I don't know if I'd be able to say that after everything she'd done to me. Maybe that's just me, but I think it says a lot about him as a person that he isn't sitting there wishing the worst for her years later. Hopefully, this is genuinely the last update. It sounds like he's finally in a place where this whole thing isn't defining his life anymore. And after everything he went through, I think he's earned that. Let's get on to the next story. To tell my wife that I cheated on her while she had postpartum depression. That is a wild title, but let's get into this. I know I'm a POS and I don't deserve my wife and our 2 beautiful sons, 4 and 2. I know that by telling her this will be the end of our marriage. She will not forgive me. There will be no talking through it. She will tell me to pack my bags and leave immediately. I can't live with the guilt of not telling her, but I can't live without her. I don't know what to do. Basically, my wife and I always wanted a traditional family. I would go to work and she would stay home with the kids. We both always wanted a large family, a house in the suburbs, a dog, the whole thing. We got married when she was 19 and I was 23. She got pregnant right away and our first son was born 9 months to the day after our wedding. He was such an easy, happy baby. We were all so happy. My wife was super passionate about cooking, arts and crafts, and home decor. Our home was always spotless, despite having a baby and dog. We had a great marriage and a healthy sex life. We were both naive enough to think that being parents was always going to be easy. We started trying for another as soon as the doctor cleared us. It took about 8 months for her to get pregnant, which stressed her out a lot because she got pregnant so easily with our first. This pregnancy was different. She had no energy. She gained a lot of weight and was unrecognizable. With our first son, she only had a small bump, and you wouldn't have even known she was pregnant if you saw her from behind, or if she was wearing an oversized shirt. With this pregnancy, she blew up like a balloon. Her face and feet were swollen. I sound like an a-hole for saying this, but she looked like a monster. We didn't have sex for the entire pregnancy. Sometimes she would try to initiate, but I always turned her down because I was repulsed by her. She had a difficult birth, and our son was born with some health issues. Relatively minor, thankfully, but enough to give us a scare. My wife blamed herself for our son's health issues. In the heat of the moment, I told her that if she had been more active during pregnancy then, our son probably would have been fine. She just kept sinking further and further into depression. She stopped brushing her hair and it started to mat. I would come home from work at 5 p.m. to find our older son still in his pajamas. The dirty dishes were piled a mile high in the sink. She stopped showering regularly, and she refused to go on a jog to lose the baby weight, even though I tried to encourage her by saying I'd cook dinner if she did. Our son's physical needs were being met, but emotionally, she was checked out. I started fantasizing about being single and not having a wife or kids. I started going to the gym and the bar after work instead of going home to them. I met Cassidy, 19 female, at the gym, and we really hit it off. She was vocal about never wanting kids, and when I would complain about my wife to her, she would pile on, too. I was happy at the time because I wanted someone to validate me for being such an a-hole, but looking back, I'm disgusted. Pretty soon, Cassidy and I were dating, and I was having a whole separate life behind my wife's back. After a few months, my wife slowly started to return to her old self. She started taking more pride in her appearance and started cooking from scratch again instead of ordering takeout or frozen food. Our home was clean again, and our younger son's health issues were improving. I fell in love with her all over again. I started to realize that Cassidy wasn't as exciting and interesting as I thought she was. She was actually quite dull and stupid and had no real opinions or interests outside of partying and TikTok. I started to suspect that she didn't actually like me either and was just flattered by the attention of a married man, and I stupidly enabled it by making her feel special and better than my wife. I ended things with her a few months later, and she didn't even seem to care. All in, I was cheating on my wife for just over a year. My wife has recently started asking to try for a third baby, and the guilt all just hit me at once. I feel paralyzed. I have nightmares that she finds out from someone else. I've stopped eating and sleeping. I'm starting to get aches and pains from the stress. I don't know what to do. I know I'm an a-hole. I know I don't deserve her, but I don't know how to tell her without breaking her. She's amazing, and she never deserved this. Yeah, I don't really think there's much defending this one. I actually think the saddest part of the whole story is that his wife was clearly struggling with what sounds like really severe postpartum depression, and instead of recognizing that she needed help, he seemed to take it as a personal inconvenience. Reading it back now, he obviously understands that, but it's really hard to read some of the things he admitted saying and thinking about her during that time. I do think it's worth saying that postpartum depression can be incredibly serious. It's not somebody being lazy or deciding not to look after themselves. They were both dealing with a newborn, and one child was having health problems, and she was clearly not herself. It sounds like she needed support more than anything else. And then instead of talking to someone or trying to work through it, he started an affair that lasted over a year. That's the part that really gets me. This wasn't one terrible decision that happened in the moment. There were so many opportunities to stop, to come clean, or to think about what he was doing, and he just didn't. I will say, though, I do believe he genuinely feels guilty now. I don't think he's writing this because he's trying to justify what happened. I think he's writing it because he knows he's probably about to lose everything, and he knows it'll be because of his own choices. Apparently, there's an update to this one, and honestly, after reading all of that, I have no idea how this could possibly end well. Let's see what happened. I really didn't expect the last post to blow up so much and even reach TikTok. I'm just going to post an update and then I'll probably delete this account. As per somebody's advice, I took the day off work, dropped our 2 sons off at their grandparents' house and sat my wife down. I came fully clean. I made no excuses, told her I didn't expect forgiveness and that she had every right to say or do whatever she wanted. She didn't respond for a while, but then very softly and quietly told me that she wanted me out of the house the next day and that we were done. She didn't scream or cry or show any emotion. I asked her if she wanted to say anything else, and she said no. I told her I was sorry, and she said she didn't want to hear it. We sat in silence for what felt like forever while she stared blankly into space. When our sons came home, seeing how expertly she was able to put on a brave face and not let them know anything was wrong broke my heart. It hit me like a ton of bricks that she was used to doing this, and it was all my fault. I slept in the guest room that night, but didn't get much sleep. The next morning, our older son asked me why Mommy was crying again last night and said he wanted her to cheer up. My wife refuses to speak to me, look at me, or acknowledge me in any way. I heard her on the phone to her best friend who lives in another country. She told her that she thought she had found a good one and that she was going to break the mold. Her grandfather walked out and left her grandma with nothing. Her dad walked out and left her mom with nothing. I'm a piece of shit, just like every other man in her life. I left today and she didn't even look at me or say anything. She just continued watching TV and crocheting as if nothing was happening. I'm staying at my parents' house and they are disgusted with me. My mom cried when I told her. They love my wife like their own daughter. I let everybody down. I deserve everything coming my way. This update left me feeling a little frustrated. I do believe that he's genuinely sorry. I don't really question that. But even in this update, it still feels like so much of the focus is on his guilt, his shame, and his life falling apart. And I get it. Of course he's devastated, but he is not the victim here. She's the one who has to figure out what her future looks like now. She's the one who's suddenly becoming a single parent to 2 young kids after finding out the person she trusted most had been living a completely separate life for over a year. I also think he's still spending a lot of time calling himself a terrible person, and maybe that's true, but at some point, continuing to say, "I'm the worst, I'm awful, I ruined everything," doesn't actually help anybody. The damage has already been done. If he really wants to make things right now, the focus probably needs to shift away from how guilty he feels and toward being the best father he can be for those 2 boys, even if the marriage is over. I don't really know if there's a happy ending to this one. I just hope, more than anything, that his wife eventually finds someone who gives her the kind of support she deserved in the first place. And yeah, there is no defending what this guy did. Well, I wasn't exactly planning on ending the first video on such a heavy story, but I guess that's kind of the nature of Reddit. You never really know where a story's going to end up. If you've made it this far, I just wanted to say thank you for giving the very first video on the channel a chance. It genuinely means a lot. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. It helps more than you probably realize when you're trying to get a new channel off the ground. And if you've got any favorite subreddits or stories you'd like me to read in future videos, let me know down in the comments. Thanks again for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.